hailing their hero, Canada's extraordinary tribute to the man who protected Parliament. MPs stood in honour of Sergeant-at-Arms Kevin Vickers, who shot dead a gunman rampaging through the building.
Also tonight, the boss of the NHS in England asks for big money and big change.
The first piece is we need to get healthier as a nation. The second is we need to change our services. The third piece is we need the support of the next government.
Utter disgrace, the decision to free police murderer Harry Roberts criticised by his victim's daughter.
And a king of glam rock, Alvin Stardust, dies at 72.
This is ITV News at 6:30 with Mark Austin and Ranveer Singh.
Good evening. It was the moment a nation said thank you to the man who risked his life protecting their parliament. Canadian MPs stood and applauded the Sergeant-at-Arms who 24 hours earlier had come face to face with a rampaging gunman and shot him dead.
There was also a moment of silence for the soldier murdered by the gunman. Canada's Prime Minister said his country would not be intimidated. Our correspondent Robert Moore has the latest from Ottawa.
As he strode down the hallway and into the chamber, Canadian MPs gave their Sergeant-at-Arms a prolonged standing ovation. Kevin Vickers has emerged as this country's hero after shooting the gunman dead, undoubtedly saving lives. For many minutes, the applause and cheers echoed around the House of Commons. This former Mountie turned the horror and chaos of the attack into national pride. Vickers was filmed yesterday immediately after the gun battle, still patrolling the corridors, pistol drawn, looking for further threats. The Prime Minister said Canada would never be intimidated.
Well, here we are, in our seats, in our chamber, in the very heart of our democracy, and our work goes on.
The attacker was Michael Zehaf Bibo, a petty criminal who appears to have become Canada's worst nightmare, a self-radicalised, homegrown jihadist. He was glimpsed yesterday just after the murder of a soldier, jumping into a car to his next target, the Canadian Parliament itself. It was here that the gun battle took place, that shook this tranquil city to its core. The one victim was Nathan Cirillo, shot while on guard duty at the sacred Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. This photo was taken moments before the attack. Nathan on the left here.
I know no one deserves to die at a young age or whatever, but he didn't deserve that.
At the War Memorial this morning, Stephen Harper paid his respects.
Get down!
But at the same moment, just a few meters away, in a sign of these nervous times, police intercepted another potential threat, arresting this man. Canada feels different today, resilient but vulnerable. Well, according to police tonight, it does seem increasingly likely this was some kind of lone wolf-style operation by the gunman. But we still don't know whether he had a network of supporters and even whether he had allegiance to the Islamic State. Frustratingly, he was on the radar screen of counter-terrorism officials, not under active surveillance, but we believe that he'd applied for a passport and be denied it. And talking to MPs here today, I really got the sense, paradoxically, of relief. Many felt that without the intervention of that Sergeant-at-Arms, this tragedy would have been a great deal more serious.
Robert, thank you very much.
The head of the NHS in England has demanded all the political parties back their universal praise for the health service with at least £8 billion of new money. Simon Stevens says without radical change, the NHS will face a £30 billion shortfall in the next 5 years. Here's our political correspondent, Romilly Weeks.
There is no dispute the NHS is under pressure as never before, the health service itself in need of some life-saving surgery. The new head of NHS England has leapt into the fray with the most radical plan yet to safeguard its future.
The first piece is we need to get healthy resignation. The second is we need to change our services. The third piece is we need the support of the next government, not just in funding, but for the changes that we want to make. With those three pieces in place, the future of the health service can be far better, even than the brilliant services that we've got right now.
The report makes clear to get better, the NHS in England needs more money. It predicts a £30 billion shortfall by 2020 if nothing is done. NHS England proposes to meet 2/3 of this itself by making £22 billion worth of efficiency savings. But it wants the next government to commit to fund the shortfall of £8 billion.
This spanking new GP surgery in East London is a good example of how the NHS can become more integrated and more efficient. Here you can see nurses, doctors, but also specialists from local hospitals. But efficiencies alone won't save the NHS. This was also a direct challenge to politicians for more funding.
Today, all sides welcomed the report, but that was where the consensus ended.
The report could not be clearer. Simply protecting the NHS budget in the next Parliament, as the Conservatives propose, will not prevent it tipping into a full-blown crisis.
The Right Honourable Gentleman told this House repeatedly that it was irresponsible to increase spending on the NHS. Now we have a report that comes out that says the NHS does need real terms increases along the lines that this government has actually been delivering.
The truth is, Simon Stevens is asking for more money than any of the three main parties have promised so far. The NHS was always going to be the big election issue. Mr Stevens has just dramatically raised the stakes. Romilly Weeks, ITV News, Stratford.
Well, ever more radical efficiency savings are being planned to keep the NHS budget under control. Some are already taking shape in Birmingham, from where Lewis Vaughan-Jones reports.
The NHS's big new idea can be shaken down to an old saying: prevention is better than cure. So, to cut obesity, for example, one possibility is people receiving money or vouchers if they try to get fit.
In the long run, it'll save the NHS because it get all the obese people to get fit.
I think people should do it without any financial incentive to do it. I think they should do it anyway.
Be paying for getting on.
OK.
As well as stopping more people becoming ill, the NHS also want to treat us closer to home. Margaret Matthews is having her back x-rayed, not in hospital, but at her local GP surgery.
I've had everything done within a few hours. No, only a quarter of an hour walk away from the surgery. So to me, it's wonderful.
Generally speaking, we save about 30% of the cost of a patient going into hospital for their specialist care.
Bringing some hospital services into GP surgeries may save money, but rolling out changes and technology like this across England is a huge task.
I think the future, particularly in primary care, is to deliver out-of-hospital care services a lot closer to home and actually start to increase the specialisation within general practice.
So the NHS wants to keep us away from places like this, expensive hospitals, by encouraging us to be healthier and treating us more locally. But they admit they don't know how much these significant changes will cost, and there's no guarantee about how much money they will eventually save. Lewis Vaughan-Jones, ITV News, Birmingham.
There was trouble ahead of Everton's Europa League match at Lille tonight, with police using tear gas and rubber bullets. The game is now underway. Our sports editor Steve Scott has the latest.
To a backing track of breaking bottles this afternoon, Everton fans who'd packed into the main square felt the full force of Lille's riot police. A confrontation that, according to eyewitnesses, escalated rapidly and for no obvious reason.
Don't need some tear gas, it was kids!
Supporters say officers fired tear gas as they attempted to disperse some of the many thousands who travelled to watch tonight's match.
It was quite rowdy, but it was all sort of a positive atmosphere. Like all the Blues were just singing and chanting. None of it was like troublesome. It was just all sort of fun, innocent, like football chants.
One theory is the trouble may have started when plainclothes detectives tried to arrest a couple of suspected troublemakers, and, mistaking those officers for rival supporters, other Everton fans retaliated. There are now concerns tensions will rise again later tonight, back in the city centre when the game is over. Steve Scott, ITV News.
The biggest crisis in Tesco's history just got worse today. Profits are down by 92%, and the black hole found recently in the company's profits has deepened to the tune of £13 million. The chairman has quit, but the new chief executive has told our economics editor Richard Edgar he has a plan to put Britain's largest retailer back on track.
Everything was not as it seemed at Tesco in the first 6 months of its trading year. The tills kept ringing, but the company had exaggerated profits by £263 million.
Please wait for assistance.
The new chief executive is only 7 weeks into the job. I put it to him that something had been rotten at the heart of Tesco's UK business.
I don't agree with that.
£263 million, that is pretty rotten, and in practices that stretch back not months but years. These were deeply ingrained practices.
This is a very specific issue around how it is we've accounted for commercial income. So a few things that you should be really clear about is that this was a question of timing, not validity.
But it was deceptive to investors. It was leading investors to think that the business was doing better than it actually was.
And when faced with the issue about the judgments that were taken on commercial income, myself, the team, have taken a very open, very transparent approach to the problem.
Tesco's problems started in its stores. Tesco charges its suppliers for putting their goods in prominent positions like this one on the end of an aisle. But things started to go wrong when it took future income and used it to hide flagging sales earlier in the year, deceiving investors. And all this has come at a price, the share price. As sales have slowed in Tesco's stores, investors have sold off the stock, sending the shares tumbling 54% in the past 12 months. When things started going wrong with its bottom line, that's when problems arose within the company, as this former Tesco executive explains.
Tesco didn't really anymore know what they wanted to do. And if you're on a winning strategy, you have clear plans, you stick to them. Tesco was desperately trying to adjust all the time, trying to do new plans.
The new boss promises surprises for customers in his stores. Tesco's investors hope there will be no more surprises for them. Richard Edgar, ITV News.
Still to come, we're on the Ebola front line in Sierra Leone as the UN's man on the ground tells us the worst is yet to come.
And a tribute to glam rock legend Alvin Stardust by the man who made him famous. Those stories and more after this break.
Welcome back. The president of Sierra Leone has told ITV News that his country is finally getting a grip on its Ebola epidemic. But there was a less rosy assessment from the head of the UN's Ebola mission, who says there's more of the crisis still ahead. Our correspondent Dan Rivers reports from Freetown.
Listless with fever, the sick of Sierra Leone have few options. These people might have Ebola, but their chances of getting decent care are slim. Just this morning, 4 cases arrived. Most days see more than 10 people turning up with Ebola symptoms. They're forced to wait in a tent outside the main hospital in Freetown. The isolation unit inside is completely full. In a rare interview since the outbreak, Sierra Leone's president defended his government's response.
It took you 5 weeks to speak after the outbreak, 10 weeks to visit the epicentre, 15 weeks to declare an emergency. Do you accept your personal reaction was slow?
The Ebola outbreak was announced in May, and it was new to all of us. We were not alone in the fight. We also had WHO, who were principally advising us on what to do. And at every step of the way, we have had consultations with them, and I believe that we have been reacting appropriately.
The World Health Organization has launched an internal investigation into its botched initial reaction But the man recently appointed to supercharge the UN's Ebola response says help is on its way.
The United Nations is doing everything we can now. So far, the crisis is still ahead of us. You know, the crisis got way out ahead of the international community, but now we are throwing everything we have at it.
The president recently put his defence rather than health minister in charge of the crisis, insisting that will make a difference.
I am of the view that by the end of the year, would be in a position of not eliminating but containing the Ebola virus.
But for those waiting outside Freetown's Connaught Hospital, that will be too late. Dan Rivers, ITV News, Freetown.
Here, the daughter of a policeman murdered 48 years ago has called the planned release of her father's killer an utter disgrace. Harry Roberts would have hanged for the murders of 3 officers in 1966 had the death penalty not been abolished just months before. Emma Murphy reports.
London 1966. 3 police officers are shot dead on a residential street in a crime described as the most heinous for a generation. Just a year after the abolition of the death penalty, Harry Roberts was convicted of their murders and jailed for life with a minimum sentence of 30 years. 45 years on, he's set to be freed, aged 78.
It smacks of hypocrisy when we've got the Home Secretary saying that life should mean life for the murder of police officers, and yet, even though the judge in this case said that Harry should never come out of prison, that's exactly what's going to happen.
The families of PC Geoffrey Fox, DC David Womwell and Sergeant Christopher Head have condemned Roberts' release. Mandy Fox, daughter of Geoffrey, asking, "What signal does this show to our courageous police officers? It is an utter disgrace and should never be allowed." David Womwell's widow Gillian adding, "We resent the fact that he will be released. Our sentence is for life and so should his be." When Harry Roberts was jailed, he was told the enormity of his crimes meant that it was unlikely any Home Secretary would free him. In the end, that decision has fallen to the parole board. They say they have assessed his time in custody and decided that he no longer poses a risk to the public.
One of the guys got out of the car, come along and went bang, bang, bang.
Glenn Hazel was 11 at the time of the shootings.
He won't be out long. Someone will do something to him somewhere along the line. But I don't think he should be allowed in anywhere near the public.
Harry Roberts' crimes appalled a nation. Half a century on, his freedom appalls many who believe that life really should mean life. Emma Murphy, ITV News, West London.
Hundreds of people have lined the streets of West London to say farewell to murdered schoolgirl Alice Gross. A private funeral service was held for the 14-year-old after a street procession, which her family described as a celebration of her life. The teenager's body was found in the River Brent 3 weeks ago.
And finally, tributes are being paid tonight to the singer Alvin Stardust, who's died after a short illness. He was 72.
One of the biggest stars of the glam rock era, his career spans 6 decades as both musician and actor. Rebecca Barry looks back on his life.
He put the glam and the rock into the 70s glam rock scene. And with hits like this, Alvin Stardust became a star. With all that black leather and the enormous quiff, he played the part with aplomb. But this bad boy of pop was born simply Bernard Jewry and grew up in Mansfield. This is the man who made him famous. Lord Levy signed him to his record label back in 1973, but only after a second audition.
He came back the next day with hair dyed black, black leather outfit, black glove, and we thought, wow, this really, this looks exciting. He loved performing, he loved being on the stage, he loved interacting with the audience, and he really was a really decent guy.
When you cross the road, always use the green cross code.
At the height of his fame, Alvin Stardust even appeared in this road safety campaign, and in later years, he worked as an actor.
Take it from me, be smart, be safe.
But he never stopped singing. This photo was taken just this Saturday in what turned out to be his very last show. Having recently been diagnosed with cancer,
He passed away this morning, surrounded by his family. He was 72. But with a new album due out next month, his music will live on.
Remembering the singer Alvin Stardust.
That's all for now, but later on ITV News at 10, a glimpse into comedy history.
This is the face of Aristide Goulet, the French trade union leader.
How 2 rare episodes of the TV show that blazed the trail for Monty Python have been rediscovered. We're back at 10. Until then, from us, bye-bye.
Goodbye.